Welcome, everybody. Day two at the VM workshop here in 2021. And our next presentation is Information Technology's Best Kept Secrets. With us, we have Len Santalucia from Vicom Infinity and a couple friends. So over to you, Len.
Oh, thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity. Hello, everybody. Nice to see all of you and hear all of you. I appreciate you spending time with me for the next hour. For those of you that I do not know, I am Len Santalucia, and I'm a CTO and Business Development Manager for Vicom Infinity. We're a IBM Mainframe Platinum Business Partner. We've been in existence since the early 90s. When I was at IBM, from the years of 78 through 2009, Vicom Infinity was one of the IBM Z business partners that I supported. And when I retired, they made me a nice offer and I accepted the position. So I've been here since the tail end of 2008. So it's been a very good company. And one of the things as part of business development that I do is going out and speaking to schools, faculty, students, and even some high schools to try to get them to understand what's going on with the IBM Z mainframe in the world. And this presentation got invented because of that, what we learned. Between myself, Mark Smith, who presents this presentation also, who's not here today, and myself, we thought that the title of being the best kept secret is really very true. You know, when I was in school back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, mainframe was it. But you talk to people today, and in these schools and so on, they are not familiar, or they think of it as something with spinning tapes and things like that that they see on the movies and so on and so forth. It's become somewhat of a what I would call a invisible brand. And so what we have done with this presentation, and this is something that, you know, you will all have access to this. It's been posted by Rich for me on the site, the VM Workshop site, and a couple of different ways of using this to help us in the mainframe community and educators to raise the students' awareness, help fill mainframe class seats if they're teaching it or attending the Master the Mainframe contest and other mainframe types of events, address the mainframe skill shortage, and then but the main purpose behind this presentation is for helping people understand what is the secret technology, why is it so important, who uses it, what can a student or faculty teaching students gain from teaching and studying this technology. One of the situations that's going on right now, and these are numbers that were from the 2020 timeframe, I'm sure they've changed and gone up, is that there are approximately 60,000 comp sci graduates per year in the United States, but yet there's 84,000 open mainframe positions as of the 2020 timeframe, and about 10,000 baby boomers retire every year. That's the age group that I'm within. So, as you can see, there is a lot of room for opportunity to connect these two different worlds together and helping from awareness standpoint, from job standpoint, from career standpoint. You know, there's a lot of students that are going into jobs with the Googles and the Amazons and those kinds of places, because those are the things that they see, that they, you know, they see it on their tablets, they see it on their phones, but a lot of times behind what they're using and that's hidden behind everything is something in a way of some data or a transaction that's being transpired back to the mainframe, and they don't see that. And that's how it's become such a secret and so invisible to the world. So another thing we try to convey during this presentation, and there's my colleague Mark Smith standing next to one of the mainframes at the time at a conference, is that, you know, there are tools that you use for certain things. You know, you don't use a wheelbarrow to put in a house or a skyscraper, and you don't use a dump truck to work around your yard in the garden. Just the same way as, you know, what you were holding in your hand, you don't do and handle the kinds of workloads and volumes and things that you would do in and around on the mainframe. You use the right tool for the right job, right? And as we look at what has transpired over time, you know, people, again, I told you, a lot of times when I'm talking to these faculties, not so much the students, unless they've been somewhat talking to some old timers that gave them the wrong idea to begin with. But, you know, I remember that black and white TV, and now everything is flat screen, right? Those cars were, now look what they look like and how advanced they are. And then the mainframe, which would take up rooms, very large rooms, now fit in just a couple of racks. And, you know, that mainframe that you see here is at the top of the page, was actually at the school where I graduated from, and called by the name of Binghamton University, where we're going next year for the VM Council or the VM workshop. And probably on a couple of chips inside this mainframe with the racks that Mark's standing next to did the work of that whole entire huge mainframe that's right there. So things have changed, it evolves. We need to keep getting those kinds of messages out to people. And then what we do, what all computers have in common is that they all really do work with zeros and ones, except of course now with the advent of quantum computing, but they all really deal with zeros and ones the same way, whether it's something you hold in your hand, something that's sitting on your desk or under your desk, or a couple of these racks. There was this presentation given by a recent graduate that about what a mainframe is, and I've included the link here so that you can watch it later, and it does a very nice job of explaining what a young person's point of view now is after they got some kind of religion here and understood what the mainframe is and what it can do. So it was very, and there's a bunch of other ones you can see right here, 3 or 4 others right here at the bottom that you can watch that are very good. There are also some links to additional video resources. What are mainframes is what you saw on the previous slide. And then what makes millennials really become enamored with the mainframe, how the plastic bank uses blockchain on the mainframe, I don't know if you've heard about the Plastic Bank, but they are a nonprofit organization using Linux 1, and they are collecting as much of the huge amounts of plastic floating in our oceans and recycling it and using blockchain to do so on the mainframe, on the IBM Linux 1 only mainframe. There was a young man by the name of Connor who's now working at IBM that myself and Neil Ferguson from CNA Nominate discovered a few years back, that actually bought a mainframe and had his parents break open the foundation and so that he can get a Z890 into his house, because he wanted to work on it, and he did some really great things with it and became actually hired by IBM not too far down the road after doing that. He's very famous, really quite a kid. And there's a really cool demo here of a mainframe being assembled within 20 seconds. It's all handmade on the floor in Poughkeepsie, and a nice video of some of the new faces of IBM that you saw in the previous chart also. And then another thing that I have fun with when giving this presentation is talking about, okay, you don't know what the mainframe is, but think about it this way. 7 of the top U.S. retailers use the mainframe, 45 out of the 50 top worldwide banks use the mainframe, 4 out of the largest airlines use the mainframe, 8 out of 10 of the world's largest insurers, and you'll see later on where we start talking about this, I have examples of some of the things that could happen when the mainframe maybe isn't there in some of these places where they use them. Now, one of the things I have found when I've been in classrooms presenting, sometimes at evening events with student things like RAMHAC and other places that have student organizations. One time I was presenting and they were having a hard time trying to understand, or they were questioning what a mainframe is, even with the pictures and everything, showing them. And out in the hallway, I happened to notice a ATM, and it was happened to be Wells Fargo's ATM. I started talking about Marcy, how I knew Marcy there at Wells Fargo, who a lot of us know here, and how I said, that's a mainframe out there. And they turned around and I go, no, it isn't, it's an ATM. I said, if that wasn't hooked into the mainframe, you guys wouldn't be able to get any of your money. And they go, nah, that's not true. They didn't believe me. But once they started getting and seeing that dependency about, I said, well, are any of you guys going on spring break, hopping out of a plane? What airline are you going to use? Delta. I go, oh, okay, well, they use the mainframe, so you're going to use a mainframe when you do that. So they started getting more and more understanding from a discussion like this, and I found giving these kinds of examples are very good ways, not only for students, but even for some of the faculty to realize that how much the mainframe is a part of everyday life. Another thing that they didn't realize is that 55% of all the enterprise applications need a mainframe to complete transactions. 80% of the world's corporate data originates on the mainframe, and 30 billion business transactions are processed on a mainframe every day. And it really was astounding and eye-opening to these discussions with the students and faculty. So another point that we try to say is, okay, look at it from another perspective that they could relate to individually. What occurs in 1 second? Well, about 5,700 tweets occur in every second of every day. Tinder swipes, about 18,000. photos shared, about 20,000 per second. And this is the one that everybody gets. And this is, wow, 63,000 searches with Google. I think it's closer to 70,000. So I usually say about 70,000 searches per second with Google. And then I show them this one. How many CICS transactions per second on the mainframes across the world? And I say, look at that. And it's an order of magnitude larger than any of them. And even if you combine them all together, nothing compares. Nothing. And they just sit there in silence and amazement. And then here's a real example from Walmart, where about 700 million transactions with CICS per day. And this was back in 2017. We can get a more current chart from them sometime soon, but the point is how much of a secret this world in which the mainframe lives is, and how much it's really, and everybody knows about Walmart, so that really hit them right between the eyes too. Another thing that we try to get across with this presentation is how what's in the name of the mainframe. Going back to my day, 370 and 390, although I do can say one thing that not too many people can say. In April 7th, 1964, I was just going on 11 years old, and I went to the announcement with the IBM 360 with my grandfather and father, and actually touched, which we believe was the first 360 that came off the assembly line and being shown for Family Day. And then, as time went on, it became known as a world-class server, a mainframe, a Z enterprise system, and then Z system, and then now today the current brand name is IBM Z. And if we don't know this as a speaking point, I always tell everybody in the examples when I'm presenting to them, what does the Z stand for? And they're all looking at me kind of funny, and I say, well, the Z stands for zero downtime because of how reliable, or I usually say near zero downtime, but to hit them between the eyes, if I can get away a little more murder in a classroom with students. So another point that we try to get across with this presentation to these people when we're presenting to them is how much it can scale. It's the illities of reliability, availability, how trusted and secure it is, how it's the most securable system in the world, operationally efficient, and so on. And what I usually say here on the secure part, especially a lot of things going on that we've all seen with Amazon, and then recently, of course, with Colonial and JBS meat factories and so on, this is the only system that can secure data in flight, at rest, and even while it's being computed upon with the new fully homomorphic encryption capability, FHE. Nothing comes close to this platform. And then, as you saw in the previous presentation, that when it comes to what it really costs in comparison, when you look at TCO, total cost of operation, it is much less costly than the alternative platforms. And mainframes account for 68 of production workloads, but only 6% of the total IT spent. Another fact that they say, how is that possible? Well, then you get into more discussion, of course. You know, these are all meant to be conversation starters, and you can see by the looks and expressions in them what they would like to get into more detail. And I'm sure most of us here today can talk about this pretty well. And then back in the day, when I was working in the Endicott lab with Bill and some of the team, I was on a team that was an outbound team to go out and speak to clients. And these next two charts were something that myself and a couple guys put together to try to give people an idea on how scalable and how well this IBM mainframe can really scale. Some of you might remember a name at IBM, Sam Palmisano. Now, Sam happens to be a friend of mine, and how it happened was when I was in Endicott, and he was a client exec in Baltimore with IBM, I was assigned to him when he called in for someone to come out and talk to one of his clients about something called the 4381. Anybody remember that? And 9370. Those are in the 80s, right? They were brand shiny new back then. So anyway, what happened was we had to do a comparison back then. So what I usually say here is this is the performance envelope of any and all computers. Every computer has to do I/O. Every computer has to do numerically intensive computing and has to do things inside of memory. So there's three dimensions of performance to every computer. And I say each of them are designed to do certain things. And just because they're designed to do certain things doesn't make them weak. It just means use them for what they're designed to do. And I never use the word strengths because it automatically implies weaknesses. I just use the word design strengths or design points. And I usually build up to this chart coming up next, one icon at a time, but I'll do it all at once here. And that is, if you take a look at this, that System 360 was always designed in the middle here to do diverse concurrent workloads in a balanced form of way. And then 390, 370, 390, and then Z came out, and over time there were other platforms that were coming out for specific types of things, you know, Oracle Exadata, the digital systems, System I, AS400 type things, Tandem Stratus. But if you look at that big cube, it is practically all-encompassing of any of them, and that's why it can do so many diverse concurrent workloads all at the same time compared to the other specialty systems that you see here that are designed to do specific things. And as an example, in that middle one, where you see Dell and Converged and HP and those things, they would have to stack up a bunch of those to do the work of what you find in that cube, the very large cube, the IBM Z, being able to handle in a way of workload. So this visual helps them to visualize a little bit better what I've tried to build up to this point in using this presentation. And then to show them what it looks like visually inside today's Z, Z15 in particular, how powerful those processors are and how many of you have. And in those 190 processors over on the left-hand side is what you're doing, where you do your applications. And in the case of the other processors that are in there, the system assist processors and the I/O processors are all part of the system automatically. But when you compare the application workload, the amount of capacity and processing capacity that's in those 190 processors, starting out with 1 and growing up through 190, depending on what configuration you have. They are the fastest microprocessor in the world, 5.2 gigahertz each. The other processors from the other alternatives are nowhere near that, and they all can't run at 100% utilization like this system can, because of those supporting I/O processors and system assist processors and cache memory in front of those 190 processors that can feed them as fast as they can take it. And the other systems just don't have that underlying infrastructure to be able to do that. So very, very powerful statement here. And especially with engineering students and comp sci students, they go, how did you ever do that? You ought to see some of the comments that I get. They're just absolutely amazed. And it's nice. One of the most satisfying things is when you see these light bulbs going off and their comments being made. It's so gratifying, as you could possibly imagine. And then some of the reasons why the mainframe has become even more popular than it was up to this point is a lot of these workloads are requiring the back-end system of the mainframe and using it. You know, we've heard of things of hybrid cloud, the amount of data, the real-time analytics, being able to work with real data as opposed to data that's offloaded and it becomes quickly outdated. The security requirements that are needed today with blockchain especially, and now even more so with the encryptions that's needed. This system can encrypt and at the same time it's doing actual transactions, as we all know, and you cannot do that with the other alternatives, as I try to point out to them. And so here's where, remember I showed that chart a little while ago about where the mainframe, like, you know, the airlines and the retailers and so on are using it. Then I try to tell them from this perspective. Without a mainframe, your airplane might not land safely, let alone take off, right? Your ATM would not be able to give you the money out of your account when you need it. You could not buy something online. Trains could not run everywhere. Hospitals could not access patient records and do it securely. That's what I add on to that. Your FedEx and UPS packages would not ship. Your internet would not work. And they challenge me sometimes, but then I give specific examples with specific clients to put them back into their place and ask them when they're going to be going on, as I mentioned before, on a trip or something, and what they might be using as a mode of transportation. And if I see, you know, most schools today have ATMs in their lobbies and their student union buildings where I go to present, and most of the time it's either a J.P. Morgan Chase or a Citi or a Wells Fargo or sometimes M&T Bank, depending on what part of the country I'm in. So, you know, I tell them about behind those very popular ATMs is a mainframe. IT, information technology, is everywhere in our lives. It depends on enterprise systems, and mainframes do extreme computing. How can you prepare to learn about this? Well, I tell them you can learn and take courses with within computer science departments, IT, computer information systems, management information systems, business information systems, financial computing, enterprise computing, and help get these courses, when I'm speaking with the faculty, integrate some form of information into their course curriculums about the IBM Z mainframe, which is most of the time what I'm doing, because I'm going out for the IBM Z academic initiative to convince them to do that. And I said there's a lot of schools teaching this. One of my colleagues attending this VM workshop today, I see them in the audience. There's a link here for the schools that are actually teaching IBM Z. It's quite an extensive list. It's in the process of being updated today, but it keeps growing, which is great because all the work that the IBM Z Academic Initiative team under Meredith Stowell and company have established. They've done a wonderful job. There is a place to get to participate and master the mainframe. Last go around, there was over 60,000 students. This chart's a little out of date, and reaching over 1,000 schools in 120 countries. A lot of badges people can get now through badge programs through IBM and Cloudera. There's a link here for colleges and students and universities to access materials to help them put their curriculums together. It's really quite an extensive organization that's been built around the IBM Z Academic Initiative. There are mainframe digital badges that are becoming quite marketable because a lot of times employers are looking for some indication of interest on the part of the student and the programs that they attend or from their faculty. Badges they've earned, whether it be from the badges they earned from the Master of the Mainframe or specific programs that you see listed here. These are all, and they can go through Coursera and do this at no charge for courses accessible for up to a month for free, so they can get these up to 8 of these mainframe digital badges at no cost. There is no charge access to select IBM technology for cloud and software and courseware. And as you can see here, faculty access to the materials, commercial customers leading training and practical training for people that they hire in their organizations, and so on. And even now, there is a program that Vicom Infinity co-authored with the IBM Z Academic Initiative, which now makes it affordable for colleges and universities to acquire an IBM Z or Linux One. It's a special offering through Vicom Infinity and IBM, and it's as you can see, it's software is at no charge when they use it for academic use only. So they can use ZOS systems, ZVM systems, Linux systems, any of the IBM software. It's really very, very affordable, and it's helped people build centers of competence. One of the nicest ones everybody's probably heard about is Marist College. They've got a lot of great things going on there to helping attract many students from other universities and colleges using their system online. It helps increase jobs and internship placements. This system isn't just dropped off if they decide to acquire one. They have managed services available so they can really use it like their own on-premise cloud if they do not want to worry about needing the skills to run it. And it's a turnkey installation. And here's a little bit more about my contact information. Just keep a note at the bottom that when we speak to this to people, that the Z or the Linux 1 system is limited to just to academic use. They can't use it to run their college, like their registration system or their, billing accounts payable system or something like that, or their payroll or what have you. It has to be used just for academic use, but that's okay. That works out fine. And this has been, there are many proposals on the desks of many of these colleges and universities now, who are now going forward for either grants or NSF funding. And I think this will really start getting things back to where they used to be, where many colleges and universities, you couldn't usually find one without some form of a mainframe in their organizations. So hopefully this will help, and I was glad to be part of this co-developing of this with IBM. Same kind of message here, where they could get jobs about if they invest their time in learning about the mainframe and pursuing them. Worldwide, there's a ton of places. It's very obvious. And what's also very nice is that when I was mentioning to you all before with, Google and Amazon and some of those places, those are jobs. Those are, and I'm going to say it in such a way where they're good jobs, but they're usually quite challenging and quite of a burnout type of thing. People last for only so long. As we all know, and many of us here today are here today, many of my colleagues here today, and people attending the VM workshop know that this is a career. It's not a job. You may not stay at the same organization where you might have started, but the mainframe world is a career. And depending on what city the students go to apply for jobs, it can depend on what their starting salary is. And, the closer you get to my neck of the woods, with inside the Hudson River and the East River surrounding Manhattan, you get closer to that top end, but the further away you get, sometimes they're lower, but then the cost of living is lower. So it's all commensurate as far as I'm concerned, and it's across many, many industries. Very promising. The kind of skills we tell people to look for in students, or students might want to know what kind of skills they might need going into this environment, into this market sector, is a desire to learn, good problem solving skills, good communication skills, good teaming skills, good attention to detail, and enjoy computer programming, but you don't have to stay there or even start there, but project management skills. These are the kind of skills that resonate to the top with some mainframe education on that same resume, that percolate to the top of the resumes that are considered by those organizations hiring and looking for people into the mainframe environment that they have. Masters of the Mainframe contest has become quite a contest. It's been running now for quite some time, and there are many students who have come through this now. Again, here's another, no sooner do you put this in writing on a chart, it becomes obsolete. And what I really like too is, you'll notice the middle bullet there on the right-hand side about how more females are participating. I really think that's a great thing, because that is very important for diversity within our ranks these days, even more so. And there's lots of nice badges, as I mentioned to you before. And Anna McKee from the University of North Texas is someone that I had the opportunity to meet, and she is now working at IBM and doing a lot of really cool projects around the mainframe. Here's a little bit about Anna. And she was the very first female Master of the Mainframe winner. I met her in Dallas at the Z Council in Dallas that's conducted there, one of the ones that we co-sponsor. And she's quite an amazing lady. But there's a couple of amazing people that I asked to join me today here. We have Stephanie Rivero and Jacob Gagnon. They are recent college graduates, and they are here with me to talk to you about their journey. They are both work at IBM, and they both work in the area of ZVM, in the lab, ZVM lab, which is all near and dear to our hearts, which is why we're here at the VM workshop today, right? So I'm going to ask them to talk a little bit about what they do, what school they went to, how they're doing with their job, a little bit of what they want to say, just period. So Stephanie, may I start with you, please? Are you out there, Steph?
Yep, I'm right here.
All right. So Stephanie, tell me, what school did you graduate from, and what was your first job in IBM? And I know you've moved into many different positions and done a lot of different things, so maybe you can kind of go along those lines. I'm going to turn it right over to you, Stephanie. The floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in computer science and business from Lehigh University in the winter of 2015 going into 2016. So like an off semester. But then I started at IBM January of 2016, moved up to Endicott in the dead of winter, and it was very cold. I'm from the Philadelphia area, so it wasn't like a huge move, but it was definitely colder up here. And joined the ZVM team. I met Jacob pretty early on when I joined. And I started as a component and function tester in the memory management side of things. And I spent at least 3-ish years in that area, which I think was like the perfect area to start my ZVM career in, because I should go back and say, I did not have any formal education about mainframe in particular in college. And all I really knew about mainframe was, pop culture references and old movies and things like that, and hacking the mainframe and the green, the black screen and the green text flashing across. So I didn't have a formal education about mainframe, but I did have the computer science background, which prepares you, I think, to learn about new things in the computer science area throughout your career. So when I interviewed with Sue Timoshenko, who was the hiring manager for the ZVM area, and she kind of explained what ZVM was and what a mainframe is, and drew a little diagram of the hypervisor and guests, and I was like, all right, well, that sounds interesting. I'm willing to learn about it, and I'm happy, to get on board. So yeah, starting in component and function test, I thought was very helpful for me personally, because it gave me a wider view of ZVM and how it worked and how like a customer would use it, which was nice. And then I moved on to, very briefly, the systems management team, which that's the team that does like SMAPI, for instance. And so I was on that team for a little while, and I don't know how much detail to go into with like what kind of tools and things I was using or what kind of programming languages, because the languages that we used in component and function test were, things that were homegrown type scripting like Chug, and also of course Rex, which is not, I mean, that's external. But um then on the systems management team, oh, are these questions for me?
No.
Oh, okay. I just saw things flashing on the chat. Um, so then I had the opportunity on the systems management team to use some newer, more modern languages like Java, for instance, a little bit. And I was very rusty at it because I hadn't touched it since college. And then after a little while on that team, I got the opportunity to move to the IBM, the ICIC IBM Center. Oh, I can't, Infrastructure Center. IBM, what is the other C? Why am I blanking? But I moved to the ICIC project basically, which is, oh, Cloud Infrastructure Center. Jesus, I couldn't remember cloud.
CIC, right? Right, Steph?
Yeah, CIC.
Yep. We know. We know.
Yeah, I always just rattle off ICIC, so I forgot the letters and what they stood for a second there. But so I moved on to that project about a year ago, and my ZVM knowledge has come in handy a lot in this project. And it's very well appreciated by my team members who have not had as much experience on the ZVM platform. And so that's kind of my career so far. And I just wanted to touch base really quickly on something that Len said, talking about how going into mainframe as a career versus like other jobs within the tech industry really burn you out. And I actually wrote down something similar even prior to Len mentioning that point, because I really strongly feel that way. Knowing people that I graduated with who went to work for, the Googles and the Amazons of the world, it is like extremely highly competitive to the point of you burning out and not having a life and things like that. And it's just, I mean, the industry in general has a very high churn rate. And compared to the industry, I think mainframe is one of the few islands of like stability within the industry. And going off of that, I mean, mainframe really is the infrastructure of IT, and so it has to be stable. And ZVM, for instance, has been around for 40, some high up close to 50 years now. Sorry, catching some comments on the chat, but
Got a bunch of characters on this session here, Stephanie.
but yeah, I mean, so I was just thinking of the parallels between, so like mainframe infrastructure, and also I really liked Glenn's slide with the old car, and then it, evolved to the new car, and how mainframe people think it's still like the old timey car, but in reality it's a whole new, evolving thing, and it's modern. But I was thinking, like, mainframe is the infrastructure. It's not the car, it's the road. And, maybe a couple thousand years ago, a dirt road was good enough. But now that we're, developing new cars, and now we're going to have electric vehicles, we need a better road. And so it's kind of like civil engineering is like physical infrastructure for the physical world, like roads and bridges and things like that. And being an engineer on the mainframe is like being a civil engineer for IT. Like, you are providing that infrastructure for all the different kinds of cars and bicycles and anything else that wants to run can run on your infrastructure. And so it's, it's just going to be stable, and it's going to be around, and you can have a much more healthy work-life balance, I think, in this part of the industry. So that is my rambling about my thoughts about all of that and my background a little bit. So I'll let
Thank
Jacob
you very,
go.
very much, Stephanie. Is exactly what I was hoping you would do. And everybody, this was not rehearsed. This was all Stephanie. She did a fantastic job. Excellent, excellent. And thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Now, Jacob, Now, Jacob happens to have graduated from my alma mater, Binghamton University, which is right across the road, and we're all going to be there again. This will be our second time going up next year, right, for the workshop. And Jacob works in the CP area. So, Jacob, I don't want to take up any more of your time slot. Why don't you give us a little background on your school and everything you've done and what kind of things you've been doing? He's presented a lot of the Z councils too. Excellent presenter, excellent presenter. You would never know that he is just starting in the business. You'd think he was a seasoned vet. He's an amazing presenter when it comes to his topic of expertise. So, Jacob, please.
All right. Well, thanks, Len. I appreciate those kind words. And I'll say, Steph, that was a great analogy at the end. You know how much I like analogies when I present. And so I don't think I'm even going to attempt one because I think you hit it. you hit the nail on the head with it. So very good. Now I'll say as well, Len, that looking at some of the images you shared on the chart deck, I couldn't help but think about the fact that my generation, that is millennials, we're a generation that loves nostalgia. And I think about the fact that, you know, we're some of the generation driving why vinyl records are kind of on the rise again. I have a vinyl record player that I use probably on a weekly basis, and we go to restaurants that look like speakeasies. And like Steph said, every time we hear a reference to the Mainframe in a Netflix series or a movie, it doesn't matter how dated the reference is, we still get a little bit giddy. So I think that's a great advantage for some of the topic that we're talking about here. But anyway, let's give a little bit of background of the disembodied voice you're kind of hearing through your headphones and speakers. So as Len said, my name is Jacob Gagnon. And for the last 6 years now, I've been working as a developer on ZVM's control program. My focus has been specifically kind of on the processor side of things. And even further into that, a lot of my work so far has been centered around scalability items. Right, items to help your VM environments be able to continue to grow wider and taller. So one of the first projects that I worked on when I joined the VM organization was to help get past the 64 logical processor limit for VM. And I've done a lot of other odds and ends items as well that I won't really get into because that's not the topic today. But that's just a little background kind of into my relatively short career so far. But before I kicked off my career with IBM, like most people, I was a student. And as Len mentioned, I got my education at Binghamton University, which is in central New York. For anyone that lives in New York or who has lived in New York, hopefully you've keyed in on the fact that I use the term central New York. I actually grew up on the border of Canada, and so I'm one of those weird New Yorkers who breaks the state up into 3 distinct sections. The North Country, where I'm from and grew up, and then Central New York, where I went to school and where I live now, and then Downstate, which is the city. And that's where most non-New Yorkers think I mean when I say that I work in New York. They think I work in the city, but I don't. So anyway, I graduated from Binghamton with a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. Actually got it from the Watson School of Engineering. Yes, that name should ring a bell. It's indeed the Thomas Watson. So I guess that makes it even more fitting that I wound up starting my career at IBM in the place where mainframes were born. Now, like I said, I've been in the industry for just a hair over 6 years now. But technically, my exposure to Z started a couple of years prior to that. So at Binghamton, one of the common courses that the computer science and computer engineering disciplines share is operating systems. And when I took that course, we were all given Linux virtual machines, and we essentially spent the entire semester tinkering with the Linux kernel and learning how it worked and how to modify it and doing all the sorts of things that engineers do when given the capacity to or the runway to go free. What I didn't realize at the time was that my indestructible little personal Linux machine was actually running off of what I believe was a Z10 in the basement of the campus. So I went through the whole semester running on a Z box without knowing it. And I think that's important to mention here because Even having that cursory exposure to the platform is something that I feel was key in enabling me to kind of better understand the value statement for virtualization and for the product that I'm working on now. Of course, that was a benefit to me as somebody consuming this and learning about operating systems, but I was able to kind of meld that into what the value add is beyond just education, and into all the shops and the cool things that you guys do with our product out there in the real world. So I consider it a rather unique exposure to the mainframe that I had. But I wholeheartedly believe that any effort that we can take as an industry to bring the Z-Box out of the basement and more prominently display it in the classroom, I think that's a positive step for the future of mainframe technology and for our industry. So I guess that's all to say that I'm always happy to hear Len and others speak on this topic and all the great work that's going on to bring awareness to our platform, and I'm certainly happy to be a part of it. I consider myself very lucky to have kind of not stumbled into this area, but found this area and this mainframe industry. So, Len, I guess that ends my prepared remarks. So I'll pass it back to you.
Jacob, excellent. Everybody really enjoyed it. As you can see, there's some applause here. And something we should also keep in mind about how COBOL skills are in demand. One of the things that irked me, I don't know if it irked you as much as it did me, folks, but when I saw that governor of the state of New Jersey say that of those misleading comments about COBOL and the problems it was supposedly causing, he was totally misinformed. And we are in the process in the Open Mainframe project helping get those kinds of messages corrected. I'll explain it to you in just a minute, but there are a lot of skills needed there. There are a lot of great opportunities in and around COBOL expertise needed. So, and that's what I tell everybody. Everybody says, "Oh my God." Well, COBOL is everywhere, and who maintain it? It's turning 60 plus years old, and here's some articles about that and how much our economy depends on COBOL. You know that number there, 220 billion lines of COBOL code? Well, the Linux Foundation Open Mainframe Project COBOL Work Group just completed a survey, and they validated that number. And on Monday next week at the Marist Enterprise Computing Conference, ECC conference, they are presenting the results of their survey and what the COBOL group is doing in and around COBOL besides just surveying it. One thing I should say about this group too is they're providing education. We did a survey also at the Open Mainframe Project about the number of people that have skills with COBOL. In less than 2 weeks, we got resumes of 1,600 people, almost 1,700 people that had COBOL skills and were ready for work. So, and they were doing it on purpose because they also saw that same article and were not pleased by the comments being made about COBOL and COVID with the state of New Jersey and a bunch of other places. So pretty cool stuff here. And when you wake the sleeping giant, watch out. If you're looking for mainframe jobs, check out these resources, earn some badges. Here's some organizations that you can use in matching your talents. Here's some additional references, bringing new talent to the workforce, to the mainframe workforce. IBM and the mainframe, the invisible brand, one of the things I mentioned up front. And to help keep us on time, I'll just leave this last slide up here and thank everybody for listening to this. I hope you enjoy using these slides when you go to talk to your high schools and your colleges and your universities to get everything out there. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate the applause. And Bill, I don't know if anybody has any questions for me. I saw things flashing up, but I was concentrating on my presentation and everything. So I don't know if there's any open questions for me before I let you move on to the next
So I
session.
think we covered everything in the chat. A lot of it was just little tidbits people were adding in. But great session. Appreciate your time, Len, and Steph and Jacob also.
Yes, and I would like to say thank you again one more time to Jacob and Steph. Guys, you did a beautiful job. Thanks a bunch. You can depend on me contacting you again for lassoing you into this. You're perfect for this type of thing. So thank you so much, and keep up the great work that you're doing. We're all very proud of you. Very, very proud of you.